Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded June 23rd, 2021. Franklin, what's up, brother? How you doing?
I am so excited about tonight.
I'm so excited.
This is
I just can't hide it.
Not that it's the night. It's not that it's the night before the Windows 11 announcement, but we're going to be talking about Microsoft Defender for Endpoint.
I mean, anybody will just, and Franklin held it close to the vest. Like, who's the guest? Oh, you don't need to know it. Well, tell me who's going to be on the guest. All right, I've been gone for a couple of weeks. We came back, and I go away for 2 weeks, and people are eating live animals on air. And
we talk about MCAS when you're not here, which is great.
I know, right? MCAS, my number one product. Woohoo to the product team, MCAS guys, right? But you know what though? I MCAS is, it's gonna be hard. It's still my favorite product, but let's qualify the question that we're going to ask. Everybody gets asked this question, right? It is not the first thing that I would deploy. After having all these guests and listening to it and now seeing it in the field, it might be the worst thing to deploy first. Yep, you heard it from me.
Wow, I'm shocked. So we're talking about MCAS here, right?
Microsoft Cloud App Security may be the worst thing out of the EMS, M365 security stack, E5, EMS, however you purchase it. It may be the worst thing to deploy first.
Wow, you just lost a lot of friends.
Well, yeah. I didn't.
They're updating the docs right now.
Well, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right, they'll get over it. And the reason being not because of the product. It is because it will raise a lot of flags that will make you answer a lot of questions that you weren't really prepared for. Let me tell you what MCAS will do. It will give you a lot of stuff without the proper context, right? And that can be problematic when people believe, oh my God, the sky is falling. And it will sometimes expose a customer and sort of put them on Front Street or embarrass them a little bit, because when I used to deploy as part of consulting and everything else, I would have the qualifying questions when I would go through the CAN, MCS deployment, how many SaaS applications are you running, web applications and so on, and the customer will say in huge amount of certainty, oh yeah, we have a really tight, we're running 50, we keep a tight control, we don't have any shadow IT. Is that right? Because every day at lunch, everybody's going to Tinder and they're going to LinkedIn and they're looking for jobs. So there's your reality.
LinkedIn is educational information. It's okay for people to go there and learn, right? I mean, come on. So what you're saying is you would not do MCAS first because it does too good of a job.
Yes, because it goes in and it looks at the infrastructure and it'll just like,
oh my.
Like, had a customer.
People that can't see this, but Rod just keeps throwing his hands in the air. You can't believe this.
Hey, I'm gonna say it.
If you're allergic to work, don't install MCAS.
I can't think of a better way to do it, because what'll happen is, had a customer had a worker who was supposed to be in one location and was not, and they saw it. Yeah. And then the employee flipped it. Why are you tracking me? Right? I'm getting the work done. So I think MCAS is still my favorite product, but it needs to be installed strategically, right? And it may be the last thing that you do, and I'll tell you why. It checks your effort. If you've gone doing MDE, MDI, MDO, Sentinel definitely not your first thing you put in, right?
No.
You don't build a house and then decide to come back and put the framing in afterwards, right? you build it and then you put the bricks and stuff on it. MDO will be the first thing. That's probably one of the most prevalent infection points, and people use it every day. Every day they're click. Yeah. Oh, a free Chick-fil-A sandwich. Click. Next thing you know, right?
So to lead in also for our guest, I am now really focused on asset discovery and attack surface reduction. But before we get into that, we do have another guest host here, which is Rod Trent. So Rod, it was like what, a week or two ago you ate a cicada. How'd that work out for you?
It was fine. I had the cicada sauce. Literally, all I tasted was that, so it was good. I live in Ohio, so you should know that all the cicadas are gone now. They're all gone, dead. Don't care about them anymore. So there's nothing left to eat. I'm gonna have to find something else.
There's nothing left to eat
later on.
Oh, there's a lot of shells left there.
Hey, we did, by the way, talk about Azure Arc last week. Remember that? And I said I'd reach out to Thomas. So I reached out to Thomas. He's probably not going to be the individual that talks about Azure Arc for us for a couple reasons. Number one, his wife just had their first baby, so he's on maternity leave, which congratulations. Yeah, congratulations. The second reason kind of folds into the first. His time zone, we do this at 6 p.m. Eastern time. That would be midnight for him. And just imagine trying to do a.
No, we're willing to move the time zone for the speakers.
Yeah, we can move the time.
People. We have people lined up overseas. So it probably won't happen now until September because I think that the Microsoft people vanish from July and August and reappear in September. Isn't that true?
Somebody said that. I don't know who said
it. Well, yeah, we're gonna have some really distant time zones. So we're going to be pulling in some guests from Australia.
Okay.
We're going to pull in some guests from Japan. So we're global. We're going to pull in folks from all over, right? So we are super accommodating, right? Franklin, to tell you, me sleeping in at 6 a.m. I get up. Right. I was up this morning at 4 o'clock and pacing the house and doing work because I don't like running in the dark. So I'm sort of scary that way. So
I don't wake up till noon and go to bed till 3 a.m. So
yeah,
Franklin he's waking up, that sort of thing. So.
Franklin will yell at you if you wake him up from his from his nap. Or I'm just waking up, right?
So what he'll do is he'll text me at like 7 a.m. Hey, I got a question for you. And I'll wake up. I'll text him. Yeah, what? And then he doesn't get back to me till like 2 o'clock. It's like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. It's like, why'd you text me at 7 a.m. then?
Because I'm up. If I'm up, everybody else should be up, right? But in addition to Azure Arc, one of the things I want to cover is that I'm sort of intrigued about Azure Blueprints.
Yeah.
Got pulled in around it. Rod, I got something to tell you offline. I don't think I can say it on the show until July 1st. So
isn't that the same thing as Azure Policy?
It is a policy blueprint is what it is.
I know it's a joke. I'm kidding.
Oh, okay.
Well, I like it because it sort of reduces a lot of the things. By no means am I expert in it, but when you can get something that's sort of pre-canned and all the artifacts have already been defined for you, there is if you go into it, the cool part about it, I work in federal. So the CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, is one of the things I'm sort of inundated with, right? Well, they have a sample level 3 for those who are familiar with it in Azure Blueprints. It'll automatically populate the artifacts for you. It was so cool. And then I'm combining that with the CMMC workbook that was created by TJ. And then I'm also mapping that to what Rhee created with the SOC thing. So I'm building a whole little SOP, right? Standard operating procedures, as well as a security operation platform. I've learned a little thing about wording. When you say SOC, people go, I got to hire, I got to do this, I got to have a building, but when you say security operations platform, they go, what's that? Well, it can be wherever you want to be. You have a browser, you got a browser. That's your platform. Good to go, right? So keywords and choices. But other than that, man, nothing. I want to talk about some stuff I did in my lab. I knocked 2 things off my lab. Got it going. And I'm about to become an IoT expert.
Mm-hmm. There you go. I know that since you tried to cut the show early tonight, now you're trying to take up a lot of time, so we can't talk about Defender for Endpoint. So who's going to introduce our guest tonight?
I'll introduce the gentleman. I know him. He's outstanding. I think we talk at least, if not once a week. We never go more than 2 weeks without talking to each other. I listen this one a few times. I keep my big fat mouth shut and I listen more than I talk because whenever I listen to you, I learn something like, oh, I didn't know that, right? They like to keep secrets, right, and amaze you, right? So glad to have him on. MDE is one of the things that I cover. I know for a fact he's forgot more about the product than I know, which is okay, right? I can always just call him and blame him. Sir, any introduction of you to our listeners is not going to do you justice. What I think you do may not actually be what you do and not what your job description does. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you, sir. Go ahead.
Thanks, Edward and Frank. My name is Yong, Rhee, and I'm a CXC program manager for Microsoft Endpoint Protection and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And what I do is help customers file feature requests. So the different design, requests and design change requests, and also help our, consultants, remote field engineers, now called customer engineers, and Microsoft partners to do good practices on deploying our product so that customers have their security, footprint implemented as well as they can in their environment, so that there's that nice balance between productivity and security. So that's what I do in my daily life here.
All right, so for people that are new to the products, what is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint?
Yes, absolutely. So, I think everyone is well aware of antiviruses. So one of the components of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is the antivirus piece of it, which we have not only definitions that are called security intelligence updates, but also is modern, where it will go ahead and if there is a new binary that we have not seen before, it will go ahead and grab the metadata first, and it will go ahead and check on the back end and see if there's a known issue with that particular binary. If that binary is not known, you do have the ability to send us samples of the binary or docs, if you send all samples, to get detonated in order for us to create a new definition on the fly. So that's one of the features that Microsoft Defender for Endpoint has, and that's a part of the prevention stack, right? Including attack surface reduction rules. The attack surface reduction rules goes ahead and provides our customers with another layer of security by trying to prevent common vectors of attacks, such as phishing email campaigns, where there might be a link or an attachment on an email sent to their end users, and that attachment or link may have a Office, Word, or Excel, PowerPoint attachment, which has macros on it, which contain malicious payloads. So what this attack surface reduction rules, which is abbreviated ASR rules, gives you the ability to prevent Office applications from spawning child processes, or from having Office applications going ahead and executing arbitrary code in your environment. So that gives you a layer of security, just in case if your email system and the email security that is protecting those attachments and links ends up missing it for whatever reason, it's able to prevent that payload from getting to your end users. Now, another layer that we have as a part of the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is the network protection, which works with third-party browser such as Firefox, Google Chrome, and others. It will prevent no malicious sites. It's going to prompt the user, and it's going to provide information that, hey, this site could be malicious. So it gives the end user the ability to either continue or go ahead and close that browser, and so that they're safe from that attack. And if all of these different preventive measures end up missing, the biggest part of enterprises nowadays is being able to see what's on the network, right? What kind of threat actors are in the environment as fast as possible. And this is where Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, the EDR portion, Endpoint Detection Response, goes ahead and comes in. And it gives the security analysts and security administrators the ability to see what's happening in these Windows servers, Mac OS, Android, iOS, and Linux devices, so that they're able to stitch together on A, how did they get in, B, what type of processes were spawned, what kind of registry keys they ended up touching, what kind of network connections did they make outbound to a control and command and control channel, what ports were used, what IP addresses, what URLs. So it gives the SOC analysts a nice amount of information at their disposal to be able to stitch all this information together to try preventing that entry point of how they got in, so that the customers are able to go ahead and prevent future attacks from that from that method that was used before.
So let me I'm going to ask a question, Yong, but I want to preface it with something. So our listeners, and we use the Microsoft rating of skill, knowledge, experience. The old method used to be 1 to 4, right? 400 were you a subject matter expert, 1 a novice, and 2 and 3. So we run the gamut where we have some 100s and some 400s, but let's say that most of our listeners are 250, 350, right? I'm being generous to our listeners, right? And so we don't do the stump the chump questions here, but oddly enough, the podcast must be picking up because I'm getting text messages that evidently I missed. And so we got to find a way to field questions. Frank, you sort of mentioned this today. How are we fielding questions before we go, right? So I got 2 questions and 1 comment. Microsoft Defender is a great product. Too bad it's bundled with E5. Are you considering spinning it off to a separate company so that you don't have to go through the hassle of making me buy the telephony when all I need is XDR and an outstanding investigation portal?
Is this what you're alluding to about telling me about July 1st? Is this, no, I'm just kidding.
No.
Okay.
No. And so everybody's here NDA, and we scrub the video and things just in case we say something, right?
No, we don't. We can't now because we're live. So
Well, we try to scrub the video. I have a feed, so this is not really live. I put a 2-second delay in, right? Because Frank won't do this. So that's one of the comments. So from that comment, I'm going to give you a question. You started off by talking about the antivirus, anti-worm, whatever the AV, right? But the thing is, we need to make sure we clarify that is not a function of MDE. That is something that it can have introspection into, because one of the other comments from this guy came out of second text. ASR, wow, you don't enable ASR inside that. You got to go inside Azure and into or MEM. And so these are the things that I'm seeing in the field. Our listeners are pretty skilled. KQL, investigation, understanding that they wish, and I think this is by virtue of the competitor that had, because they don't have our ecosystem. Is it being considered that we need to be able to make sure that the antivirus as well as the XDR component are a little bit closer, because I'm working some accounts, and when I do POCs, they were like, I don't know how to enable the antivirus piece on all this. I was like, oh, you got to go inside MEM. Well, we don't have MDM and Intune stuff. We use this. Well, yeah, but we got to enroll the devices. I've had a couple of POCs that have sort of failed because they put MDE in this subscription and tenant, but the machines were and enrolled in another one, and we couldn't, and I had a very good TS, and this is all on the customer, I promise you, because we sent them how to run your POC link and everything else. So the short question is, I think if I take 3 different texts about this, has there been any consideration of making the management a little bit more friendly so that I take care of the traditional AV as well as the XDR component and don't have to bounce in between portals? And tell me if I'm wrong. I've been doing this a little bit. I'm not as deep as, Egan and some of these other folks, right? But that's still separate, right?
Yeah, so it is separate. In a lot of enterprises, what we end up seeing is there is a separation of duties between security administrators that are managing antivirus or HIPs with rules fits into, and then managing also the EDR, which is Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And so it gives them the plane of being able to manage via group policy, via MEM/Intune, or also via config manager, right? Or any other third-party management tool sets, right? So it provides the ability to use what they currently have, or if they have any of our products such as MEM or config manager, they're able to manage it that way. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we have heard a lot of feedback on, hey, it would be nice if we didn't have MEM or config manager. We would like to still be able to manage it without having to use our third-party products. And stay tuned on that, because there's some duties that are coming down the road, and so just keep an eye on our tech community blog, and you'll see some announcements on that.
So let me jump in here and do this reverse, okay? The thing that bothered me was, if you do an analysis of the security baselines, that was kind of, they have the Defender one, and you really look, and the categories aren't the same or whatever, so that's kind of confusing to people if they don't really go and do an audit of what each one is turning on. So I find that annoying. Now, the thing that I like to see is the TVM piece over into the endpoint manager. That's in reverse from what you're talking about, right? So, we always say, hey, listen, it's up to, the security team to know ASR and what the deal is, and then work with the other team to make sure that those security baselines are created, changed, or whatever for what's specific. But why not TVM over there?
Why not TVM? Well, that's a good question, right? So from a security baseline perspective, there are some improvements that we're making as part of that threat vulnerability management secure score, and that's where we're incorporating different security hardening that we're recommending to our customers. So if you look at it, there are over 180 different security items for customers to go through and harden their environment. And obviously, each of those have a score that goes with it, because it and the scores usually end up going up in range, right? So as the more a security item that weights more, if you implement it, right, the score goes up, and the higher the score is usually means that you're doing better, and also provides you with that visibility of how folks in your industry are doing, right, compared to your environment, so that it kind of gives you a gauge of how you're doing in your company, your industry, versus others in the industry that are using the same product. So from that perspective, the Microsoft security baselines have been around before Microsoft Defender for Endpoint was around, right? So I know that a lot of the enterprise customers are well aware of it, but when you implement it, also, you need to make sure that there is that nice balancing act of making sure that your older applications end up working with these lockdowns, right? And if they don't, you do want to go ahead and look at maybe getting an update for the application, or if the vendor or the application version or the product itself is no longer being maintained, look at alternatives, right, to replace, so that you're able to harden your environment. From a threat vulnerability perspective, the one thing that I could tell you from the engagements that we end up getting pulled into were customers, in an incident response, and are running, a third-party, AV, a third-party HIPS product, or third-party EDR. The number one thing that a lot of these, enterprises end up missing out is the basics, right? Patching, or whatever reason, systems, Windows servers that are mission critical, because quote unquote they're mission critical, they end up being behind 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Guess what? That's the vector of entrance for a lot of these attacks, right? And
but does TVM tell you that?
Yes. So the threat vulnerability management does provide you with the information of the missing patches, right? The CVEs that are that are missing. But even better, if any of your AV detections or network protection, smart screen, any kind of EDR detection, if it was based on a missing patch, it will provide you with this red bug next to it, and it's going to tell you that this could have been prevented. And we see that quite a bit in environments where we come in after the fact, deploy Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and there it is. There was a detection on something that could have been prevented. But that's the beauty of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. By having threat vulnerability management included with it, right? There's no additional cost or anything like that. That it gives the SOC analysts the visibility that they may not have had, or they may only have had on their clients. Or I've seen some enterprises where they only had threat vulnerability management scanning done at the server level, right? But not on the clients, and vice versa.
So let me insert something really quick on that. Everything you write is right on point from what I don't deliver. I sort of stand side by side with the customer deliverer, so I'm not hands on the keyboard unless we're trying to do a POC or something. Production, I stay out of. That's where you generate a pink slip, right? But one thing I've learned consistently from the field, especially in large environments, you said something. You said the SOC analyst. If you're in a large environment and you're doing an MDE deployment, and more often than not, it's a displacement. I've never gone into an enterprise where they don't have something. It may be EPO, SEP, a mishmash of ESET and everybody, but generally in a true enterprise, they got something. So this is often a displacement, not even an enhancement. But when I see that, I've learned from the field, ask this question: who's your SCCM guy? You better get the SCCM guy involved early, because that's not necessarily the security guy. His job, like, man, my job is to patch, right? And do these and push out packages, right? But he needs to be in that conversation, because when I look at the documentation, it sort of suggests that you do these things. But when you start talking about AV update frequencies, GPO manipulation, and all these things to get it going, a lot of times you'd be surprised the security guy go, huh? Oh, hold on, let me go get our SCCM guy or Intune guy. Got to have that person in the room. And if I had to do it and rewrite it on an enterprise, I would do a total SCCM/Intune assessment properly. And then that way go see what machines are enrolled. That if you can get that out of the way, that helps you tremendously, right? And understanding. Because I got this question. Like I said, we're not a stump the chump here, but when customers ask me this, I give them an answer with confidence, and then they go send me the documentation. Well, we don't have any documentation. Then it's not fact. Like they'll ask, how often does the AV updates occur, right? And what is the frequency of stuff like check-in with an endpoint and things along those lines? Well, we sort of know because we do it. What is your experience if you have a large customer like this? And you know, would you recommend that route first? Like, let's take a look at your patching /AV/Intune/SCCM posture before we even go this route. Because I see customers that go in and they'll deploy it and like it's not working. What do you mean it's not working? Well, this here. And the second thing would be, I had a brain fart right there. So the first thing is, do you believe it's super critical to get your patching and lifecycle and endpoint protection? Because EPP is not XDR. Okay.
Right. It's not going to take care of the patching. Obviously, the patching will have to be a part of the threat vulnerability team, right? In conjunction with the patching and packaging team. So absolutely, right? A lot of times, you need to make sure that your infrastructure is healthy and you know that your network bandwidth has the capacity for the patches. That they are done in a timely manner, right? Because delaying it by a month, delaying it by 2-3 months or longer, that definitely exposes you for attacks that could be preventable. But yeah, we definitely need to make sure that the management team is on the table in order to secure an environment, right? Because without them, it's only so much that you can do from a defense standpoint, right? You need to be proactive on, make sure that your infrastructure is stable, that you're able to push out patches, definitions, platform updates in a timely manner.
Mm-hmm. So the same person that's heckling me is like, Edward, I used to have hair, but now I'm bald like you because I have to decide Azure Defender or XDR on my servers. I know it is. He's giving me grief. So that is a very valid thing. Like customers like, wait a minute, do I put Azure Defender or do I put MDE on my servers? And then even if you can figure out the technical piece, well, how much is it going to cost me? And I've had some enterprise and customers who finagled their way to not paying. I don't know.
So right, what is the relationship with Azure Defender, and so what is the recommendation?
Yeah, no. So the great thing about Azure Defender, right, is it works with our Azure IaaS workloads, but also you could get it installed on on-prem Windows servers or Linux systems. So there is an integration with Azure Defender and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which you get the best from both worlds, right? The Azure Defender side of the house, which was formerly known as Azure Security Center, standard tier, provides you with capabilities like file integrity monitoring. So if you're an enterprise doing business overseas, there are some countries that require your servers to have FIM, file integrity monitoring enabled in order for you to do business in those countries. So it gives you that type of capability. It gives you additional views. And the other thing that really makes it a big difference from an Azure Defender perspective is the ease of deployment, right? Because it does it for you using the IS VM extensions, right? The Azure VM extensions. So it will go ahead and deploy the extensions, which will install the right extensions for Windows Server 2019 and 2022. It just go ahead and registers so that the information from Azure Defender is forwarded over to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. On the down-level systems like 2016, 2012 R2, 298 R2, it goes ahead and installs the Microsoft monitoring agent, but also, it goes ahead and gives you the ability to install, the Azure, anti-malware component, right? So you have the AV points of it. But the great thing is that it uses only one workspace, which is the Azure Defender workspace, as a part of the MMA client. And that information is, sent in the back end to the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So, you get additional security that you would not have by just having Microsoft Defender for Endpoint.
So Rod, I do see that question out there. I'll get to that. So to clarify this, so basically you install Azure, you activate Azure Defender for servers, and that server is going to automatically appear over in Microsoft Defender for Endpoints. And where do you deal with alerts? Do you deal with that? Forget about Sentinel for a minute, but do you deal with those alerts with inside Azure Security Center, or do you deal with alerts with inside Defender for Endpoint?
Right. So, that's, where it's really, up to you, right? Because in the Azure Security, in the Azure Defender portal, you're going to be able to see not only the alerts for Azure Defender, but also the alerts for Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. If you go into securitycenter.microsoft.com, which is the Microsoft Defender portal, it will show you just the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint information, right? But now with this new Microsoft 365 Defender portal, which is security.microsoft.com, you're going to not only be able to see Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, but Microsoft Defender for Office, which used to be known as Office ATP, MCAS, MDI alerts, and you could also even do advanced hunting from there. So,
All right. So I got a few more questions. Next one is, so we talked about Azure Defender for servers, but how does Azure Virtual Desktop play into Defender for Endpoint?
Yes, so Azure Virtual Desktop, we do have support for it currently, where you could go ahead and deploy Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. We do have a nice doc that was written by one of my peers, Jesse Esquivel. So if you go to docs.microsoft.com and look up for Windows Virtual Desktop and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, you'll see the step-by-step deployment mechanism. It's very similar to VDI, non-persistent VDI deployment, but yeah, we do have documentation.
Okay. Now, there's this thing out there called ransomware. None of us have heard that before. So how does, if a machine gets infected, it gets encrypted and it starts trying to spread across, how does Defender for Endpoint help in that situation?
Yes. So, one of the, first things that I would highly recommend is in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, there is this functionality for tamper protection system-wide, right? If you don't have, MEM, it gives the ability for the Microsoft Defender antivirus to be protected against disablement by malware, right? So one of the common scenarios is, on ransomware is that the bad guys will go and get to the antivirus management product, and they'll go ahead and start disabling, all the features such as, real-time protection. They'll start disabling behavior monitoring, etc. So in order to help prevent that disablement, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint does have a toggle in settings, advanced features, to enable tamper protection. Highly encourage everyone to get that enabled ASAP as soon as possible, because it will go ahead and help prevent human operated ransomware attackers from going ahead and disabling the AV. So it gives you that layer that you may not have, right, if you don't have tamper protection enabled. So in Intune, it's a policy so that you're able to target based on security groups of devices. So you could go ahead and move machines on and off from there for troubleshooting reasons. If you're running into an app compatibility or kind of a resource contention because the app is doing something that Defender AV is scanning, right? So in order for you to troubleshoot, it gives you that that ability to move the machines between the security groups. So that's
so will Defender for Endpoint say, oh, look, that machine's trying to infect everyone else? Will it send them off to a corner, send them to the corner and make them stay there?
So absolutely. So it gives you, so Microsoft Defender for Endpoint does give you the ability to isolate the device. So if there's an alert about ransomware on that device, you're able to go in and isolate. But even before that, we do have this thing called automated investigation that we do recommend highly to set it to automatic remediation, so that if the Defender starts going ahead and notices something abnormal, it will go ahead and start running through its playbooks. So what that automated investigation is a SOAR that is built in to our EDR product, right? So there are playbooks that are part of it, and we'll start, checking for, numerous registry entries, processes that are running on that box. It will, start checking for network connections and other miscellaneous items. And if it does find something, it will go ahead and, it does have the ability to automatically quarantine that file in question, right? So, that is always useful. The other thing is the attack surface reduction rules does have a rule. One out of the 15 rules is for to try preventing ransomware attacks, right? So
well, let me ask you a quick question. So I've seen it in action. If you run the simulation and a couple other things, you turn on automatic remediation. There are policies in MCAS that can see that behavior. There is a policy of ransomware behavior. Does MDE take into account what one of its sister, brother, cousin products is seeing? Because there may be an instance where MCAS can catch it before MDE does, right? Because it may not actually be ransomware. It may be dropping the payloads and then say, okay, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, didn't do it. So does it take telemetry and consideration of the other products being able to see this?
Yeah, so it does have tight integration with MCAS, Microsoft Defender for Identity, Office threat protection. So if it does find anything, it will go ahead and communicate with each other with the Graph API, and it would be able to act upon something that's found, and vice versa, right? If let's say that MDO misses for whatever reason, and then Defender, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint starts, investigating and goes, hey, that binary right there looks suspicious. It will go ahead and follow up with Microsoft for Office. And
so we went 30 minutes without bringing up MCAS, so Edward had to figure out a way to get that in there.
Well,
so,
the biggest thing is this
kidding
here.
With you.
Let me ask one more thing. Guys on the MD side, I know you're in CXE, so you're not in the engineering, not in the product group. But the MD guys are pretty aggressive. You weren't satisfied with your own portal. You decided to take over the unified portal too. And have it in there, right? So are there greater enhancements? Because I still find myself bouncing between the unified portal and the Defender proper portal, right? There's still not complete parity. Do you know any insights about, so I can stop doing this? Because when I have when the customer has an automatic redirect that takes you from here to there, they find themselves going like, oh, this takes too long. Let me go back to the old one, right? And then they turn it off. It's close, but it's not. So better enhancements, because I saw something that's coming out that's going to make MDI really desirable in that portal, right? Like, oh, this is pretty cool. I was talking to Ricky Simpson over there on that side. So really good stuff coming out. So any enhancements to the unified portal so that I can totally wean myself off the old portal?
Yeah, absolutely. So our first phase was bringing in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and then Microsoft Defender for Office, right, into the M365 Defender portal. The next phase, it's something that we're planning, is to bring the full functionality of MCAS and MDI into the portal, right? And that's starting to roll out. Matter of fact, soon you'll see an announcement for MCAS and the alerts, where you don't have to go to the MCAS portal in order to start seeing information there. But
so I'm gonna throw some shade out here on Frank real quick. He always talking about how much I am such a homer and a lover of MCAS. But let me tell you something. He loves MDE, loves it, talks about it in his sleep. But he dates Sysmon on the side. He's always talking about how much better Sysmon is.
All right, so we have a question about some forensic side, so we'll jump to the forensic side now.
Go ahead.
So we had a question from Twitter. When are they going to add more capabilities to live response? Maybe a slightly larger command set based on constrained PowerShell environment?
That's a good question. So we've been, making some improvements over on live response, the amount of data that could be uploaded into the library, the timeout for how long a script could run, right? So there have been incremental improvements that we've been making. And for constraint, partial constraint, that is a little bit of a, I think a challenge, right? Because just the amount of lockdown that occurs with it. And so that's a good question. It's something that I will need to park because I don't know that I have a good answer on that currently.
Okay. We had another question. You want to read that, Rod?
Yes. Let me go back to it. Okay. What's the SCID for the new ASR rule to defend against exploited vulnerable drivers? And is this already covered by security recommendations or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. To our listeners, Yong is from CXE. He's not for engineering and product, right? Oh. So even if he knew, I don't know if he'd tell us.
Right. Well, so even if, right, I think, even in the engineering, the feature PMs that work on it, it would be a very specific feature PM that would know the answer to this. Yep.
So we're up against it. 10 minutes. We like to start trying to get.
All right. So we got two things here, right? First question is so do you recommend? Oh, all right. So I'll start with this question first. with the unified portal and everything is there, XDR, all of the live response and automation capabilities, do you see any need for Sentinel at all?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, dude, there you go. See, you're always doing it. That's why, guys, we don't have repeat people come back, man. There you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, Azure Sentinel, right, is beyond just XDR, right? It's able to bring in logs that maybe, the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint doesn't collect. Is able to bring in logs from different systems and whatnot. So, having an XDR as in Azure Sentinel, which it's our SIEM, right? It's they kind of go hand to hand. You would want to have additional security tools, right, to be able to ingest a different set of data.
Do you see people investigating incidents and alerts in the unified portal, or do you see them doing that in Sentinel?
Right. So, a lot of customers will start out probably in the SIEM space, right?
Okay.
And they'll do their advanced hunting out of Azure Sentinel. But then if they want to look at the granular stuff, which is the alert tree, and see how that ended up spawning, and what parent process ended up calling it, what child process, etc. A lot of times they'll go ahead and switch into the Microsoft 365 Defender portal.
So let me give you a little context to this. That consideration of running XDR and Sentinel was not picking on Sentinel. Frank loves Sentinel, so do I and Rod, right? This is just foolishness that's coming from these so-called industry experts, Gartner, and this show. My opinions do not reflect the opinions and status of my employer and or my customers. This is foolishness that's coming from these folks like Gartner, Forrester, IDC, and everything else. Like, do you need a SIM with XDR? And this is being propped up by competitors to MDE who don't have a SIM, right? And so when you don't have this, you bash what you don't have. But if you don't have a SIM, how do you ingest other telemetry sources, non-Microsoft centric, non-endpoint centric, to enrich your data and give you better entity inspection? So rather than try to compete and create, they bash. So I can't tell any of our listeners, and I definitely won't tell my customers, you'll never get me to say, oh, you don't need a SIM, XDR. That's craziness. You see it coming from all these places. Even the ICS 2 Square has some advertisement where people will come in and talk about it. So you need some type of log rationalization and logging framework to be able to have enough actionable intelligence to make you make actionable decisions. Now, I do believe that you can reduce your SIM dependency, because I think one of our peers said this thing, and I can't remember his name, but it's still true. Collection is not detection.
Yep.
Right? You can collect all day. Right?
You can absolutely minimize the effort needed. Just one simple solution: use all Microsoft products.
So
Did I say that aloud?
So let me ask this question. All right. So do you see customers also deploying Sysmon to collect additional information, or do you think Defender for Endpoint has everything that is required and you don't need to have Sysmon on the endpoints sending that information to a SIM?
Your Honor, Frank is badgering the witness. Go ahead, Yong.
Really, think it really depends, right? And the size of your SOC and what they end up doing with that data set, Frank. I mean, the truth is the amount of information that is flowing in, the amount of alerts that are getting to, even our an EDR or XDR, it's quite a bit, right? And then if your staff, And I think a lot of enterprises nowadays are staffed fairly lean, right? From what I'm able to see, a lot of times when I'm talking to them, so they could have additional data from Sysmon, right? But is anybody doing anything with that data set? Would be my question. Is anybody really creating rules, creating detections based on that additional data set, right? Because the other thing that a lot of times I end up seeing is, initially you'll get an IOC, right? An indicator of a compromise. It could be a file hash, could be IPs, URLs, but that's good for a day, a week, right? Maybe a month, right? But if you have that same role, and you don't check to see if that has been, stale. Those rules, you may have 100, 200 rules, but those rules are they really helping you, right? In the long run, right? So, and this is where I ask, it's Sysmon will give you everything, and that's where you can definitely use something like Azure, Sentinel as a scene to ingest that data set. But then the question is, I do understand that everybody is keeping up with like all the announcements that are out there from different, media, forums. But then the question is, how much of that is going to give you that additional insight into preventing, right, something or detecting something. So, I think every customer will probably have it, based on the number of folks on their SOC, the number of automation that they end up doing with a SOAR or some sort of a tool set, right? I think it really depends on the customer.
Well,
All right. So,
I'm not a fan of IOCs. I think they're overvalued. They're prone to mistakes. Believe me, when I manually created one, you can put in an improper hash IOC and it'll take it in some products, a typo, as long as you have the character format correct.
Sure.
Frank and I talked about this a month ago, right? A little bit. Dark side.
I know you're up against time here, so I'll let you ask them our famous question, so I can make sure you can get out of here on time. I'm watching the time for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm going to let Rod ask. Rod, ask the question. Go ahead. I don't want to seem like I'm leading the witness. Right?
Out of all the Defender products that you could deploy, which one would you deploy first?
Yong, what's your PayPal?
It's the Microsoft 5 E5 bundle.
So between Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, MCAS, or Defender for Office, which one would you deploy first?
I mean, Edward, is the reason that you're asking for my PayPal account is so you could bribe me? Is that what it is?
Hey.
Pretty much.
I'm looking in the portal right now, man. I mean, I'm in the Defender portal, right? So
if we were in
there's no right.
good.
It changes according to who's the guest on the show, because Suzanne made a great point. We've had Nathan, we've had.
All right, well, let's
there
hear
is
your
no
answer.
right answer.
Let's hear your answer.
Right.
Yeah.
So Microsoft Defender would be the first product.
Defender for Endpoint. There we go. Non-biased answer.
I'm biased. That's okay too. I am a fan. I mean, you're not going to see here and hear me do it. The product is solid. It does what it's supposed to do, and anyone that's going to beat up on it, I will question: did you put the effort in, and did you understand what you were trying to achieve when you deployed the product? And so if you see failings in the product, 8 times out of 10 they're not legitimate. This is because you didn't put the effort in, you didn't deploy, you didn't plan, and there's enough documentation. So I'll give my recommendation and what I've learned from the field on this. If you're in a large environment and you have a patch management solution or change control, you better go find your Intune SCCM guy and make sure he's part or she is part of this conversation. It will make your life easier. And you need to understand your Azure environment. If you hybrid or I've not really seen many just cloud only customers, the product in itself is reacting to what you did in prep and what is already in place. It's just going to react. It does its things. Out of the box, it's a solid product. I like a lot of the integrations. We were talking about earlier SIM displacement, but I go to the partner applications here. I'm still seeing send alerts to Microsoft Defender, send it to Splunk, send it to HP ArcSight, send it to SafeBreach. I never heard Accumulate. Well, I know Elastic Attack IQ. I know those guys very well. It's XM Cyber. Wow, that's new. So defense in depth is the thing that we're trying to communicate to our listeners as well as our customers, right? Microsoft has a super robust ecosystem around security, but it's not the be all. It just isn't, right? But when you combine this and be very mission oriented, right? Don't try to bash your product. Does the product help my mission? I'm a big Formula One guy. I love race cars. If you ever watched the documentary on the Le Mans, the number one team, I forget their name, they asked this question. And anything that we do, does it make the race car go faster? If it doesn't make the race car go faster, then why are we doing it? I'm not putting any paint on it. So I am getting a more and more enamored with the product. I'm learning from you. I'm learning from Matt Egan. I'm learning from Andrew Fisher. I'm learning from Jason. I'm learning from all these guys that are in the field, right? Obviously, I'm learning from Frank Gifford. You'll be hard pressed to find a better pin guy than Frank, right? He ain't much for anything else, but he's good on that, right? So I'm just kidding. And then you got Rod Trent. Rod Trent's spoiled. He only gets to focus on one product. Well, he used to only get focused on one product. So Rod Trent is our Azure specialist. You want to know anything about container security? Rod Trent's the guy to go to. Putting it out there, right? Man, Yong, I like hearing the conversation when it's not trial by fire, sir. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. You're more than welcome. You don't have to be invited. You may want to just come on. Let me tell you about something cool, right? That's how we got Ren on. We had Christopher Munez on. We had we had Matt Lowe on. We had Chris Bohm. I bet I get his name wrong. Beam. Chris, if you're here, I'm sorry. I can't never get your last name right. We had Nathan Swift on, and we're going to get more and more guests because we love perspective, right? Your perspective in CXC is different from mine because my whole job is to get it away from me and hand it over to you. And do you know Michael Evans?
Yes.
Yeah, man. Him and I go way back. That's my buddy. Go way back, man. And so man, this is good information. At any time you want to come back, I know we're in July. Some announcements are going to come out. Hey, do you happen to know if Ignite is going to be in person?
I don't.
I doubt it. Okay.
No one knows.
Nobody knows. I was just
all right, Edward. I'm going to get you out of here before you get in trouble.
Yeah, man. My son's in town. I don't hardly get to see him. I want to go to see my son. I'm old guy. I got kids and grandkids. But continue, guys. One guy don't stop any show. I had one other thing I wanted to throw Frank under the bus for, but I can't remember it right now. So we'll figure that out. Thank you so much, sir.
Me beating up on partners, is that the deal? Was that what? No.
I'll help you beat up on partners who claim they have a MSSP offering, right? Don't get me started on that. Let me ask a quick question though. Yong, do you have anybody you want to shout out? Anybody that's exceptional, a partner, a company, a group, or individual, someone that we should be following, someone we should invite to the show?
Jessica Payne, part of the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Threat Intel team.
You're damn skipping. How about that? I will definitely make that happen. We've had some SNC and some different folks, but I got it right here.
Right. Yeah, you got volunteered for this, didn't you?
Me?
No. Young got volunteered from one of our last guests.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, Jessica, if you're listening, shout out. Come on the show. Talk about it.
An email.
Yeah, I got the email. Send it out. Let's get it going. You guys have a great night. I'm sorry. It seems like I'm in a rush, but if you guys want to continue, go ahead and do it, man. I appreciate everything. Sir, thank you so much for your time. I think we got a call tomorrow, right? Or either Tuesday or something. So I'll see you again and we'll talk. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Awesome.